Welcome to the Path to Brilliance podcast featuring Utica City FC, where we highlight their shine one facet at a time. I'm your host, Shay McNamara, the performance and mindset coach for Utica City FC. This is episode 1 with Nate Bourdeau. So Nate, thanks so much for being the trailblazer.
Of course, thanks for having me. When you reached out a couple days ago, I was excited to hop on and be the first one to get this ball rolling.
It's my pleasure. I know we've had some many memories and experiences together, and so it won't be a session, but definitely a session about you sharing your story and what makes you you and why you're successful. So let's begin. So what brought you to soccer when you were a kid? Or was soccer not your first love, or was soccer your first love?
So soccer has been all I know my entire life. I think you would have to take it back to when my brother and I were young growing up. I have an older brother who's 3 years older than me. My dad always wanted to get us into sports, and my dad, being the intense guy that he is, wanted us to be the most successful we possibly could be. So he knew, he knew we weren't going to be the biggest, we weren't going to be the strongest, we weren't going to be the fastest. So naturally, you eliminate some of those sports early on. And from there, he landed on soccer. And since the age of 4 or 5, it's all I've done. It's the only sport I've played. Yeah, it's my first love, only love, and continued love. So
That's awesome. Well, you've helped many feel that love, and probably felt the opposite when you're when you're inflicting that love that you have. So that's awesome. So I gotta ask, how was mom's influence with this? Obviously, you shared a little bit with your dad, but what about mom? What was the influence there and the impact that had?
yeah, so mom was always the backbone. Mom was the one kind of putting up with my dad's crazy nonsense, crazy ideas, intensity. She was the balance to my dad's, like I said, his intensity. Um, Growing up, because it was my brother and I, and we had different game schedules. My mom actually would handle a lot of my older brothers' travel and tournaments, and my dad would then mostly be with myself. But without my mom's balance, then I think it could have gone completely off the deep end. They balanced each other well. I don't know if you've seen the movie King Richard with the Williams sisters, the tennis players. Um, but my dad's mentality and his outlook on training habits and discipline, and um, his direction he wanted us to go as soccer players, he didn't. Um, it's pretty much to a T, is what, if you were to see the movie King Richard and knew anything about the Williams sisters' um, upbringing, minus the fact that we didn't make it to the highest of levels as them. But um, yeah, it was a very similar upbringing.
So can you explain a little bit more about the impact on that? Can you tell me some of the blessings from that before we get into some of the challenges?
For sure. I mean, I'm not a father yet, so I don't know how I would handle it, if I would handle things differently and what my dad did. But I've been fortunate enough to be able to continue playing. I'm 34 years old now, so the fact that I've had as long a career as I have, I credit all of the discipline, attention to detail, sacrifice, all the cliche things that people say that go into sport, and making the best player that you can be. Man, it definitely is burned and instilled in me. I'm sure from a very young age, even like I said, starting at 4 years old. My brother and I would my dad. I'm sure most people know. Obviously, Utica fans know that it's pretty snowy in the winter. But my dad didn't want to give us any excuse to not be touching the ball and playing. So he went to the local golf dome when we were very young, and asked them if they were throwing away any turf. So my dad turfed out a section in our basement. So there wasn't a day, I don't think, that would go by where my brother and I weren't doing extra work and training. And We've missed family vacations with relatives I still haven't seen to this day. Yeah, it was full blown train, and try to make the most we can out of the game. And like I said in the earlier in the interview, we maybe obviously didn't make it to the highest of levels, but um, I have personally no regrets. And I think, maybe if things worked a little differently and opportunities panned out differently or injuries here and there, maybe I wouldn't be as fortunate as I am in other areas. So I'm very happy and very content and very grateful for the things that were instilled in me from a young age that I think have, as I get older, even leaving the game, will stick with me for a long time.
Absolutely. And from what I know of you for the last couple of years, I think your dad's spirit is definitely still within you, and you're representing that spirit to not only the guys on the team, but I'm sure the fans can appreciate that energy. But you're also doing a lot of coaching as well. So, you know, you might not be a parent yet, but technically you're a massive leader, not just for this team, but for, the teams and the people that you touch on a daily life with your training, and obviously the teams you've been part of. So I guess before we get into that, what were some of the challenges that you faced from your dad's spirit that has helped influence you on how you should handle pressure and adversity?
Yeah, I mean, I think there were moments when you experience a little burnout growing up. Just naturally, you're
Yeah.
reaching the age of 14, 15, 16, and you have girls come into play, and you start to find other interests, and there's things pulling at you, especially in the culture we have in America. There's many things pulling at you. So you might go astray for a little bit, but those, like I said, those day in, day out, show up, put in the work, what it takes to get results, just because you want something, everyone wants something. It's the days where you don't want to do X, Y, and Z, but you still know you have to do it every single day. And um, it teaches you that, I mean, again, it's cliche, but showing up is a huge part of the battle. If you just show up every single day, little by little, bit by bit, it's going to work out in your favor. I strongly believe that. You don't have to be the most talented in your field, whatever you decide to do, but showing up, consistency, and self motivation are huge, man. I've faced much adversity throughout my playing career, as all players have.
Mhm.
Um, the thing that you just can't do is, if it's what you really want, you can't quit. You just have to keep going.
Right.
There were many setbacks and opportunities that, for whatever reason, didn't go the way I wanted, but you just, nowadays I feel like younger players and kids and people in general, just they want to do something, and then they face a little adversity and they point the finger at this person or that coach or this teacher or that, and maybe there is some truth to it, but at the end of the day, if it's what you want to do, you can't quit. You can never quit, and it seems to be all too common of a theme.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's why, when I'm working with you and the guys, pay the fee. You can't escape paying what you gave of yourself, and it always can be documented and measured. And you, by far, are arguably the best leader and representation of role modeling what I try to practice in my preaching and my training. So it's really a credit to you. So, what your parents have instilled in you, and obviously feeding off your brother as well, has definitely been a guide for you. And it's obviously no surprise on my end why you've created the life that you've created so far, and the impact that you've made, not just on the team, but in your coaching. So take me in from a coaching perspective. Some people might not know that you coach, and you do it pretty much all the time, obviously. But what has been your approach from the experience of what you had with your mom and what you had your dad to make your coaching approach different? Exclude obviously the X and O's, because that's not this conversation, but just how you go about the group and the individuals. Can you explain a little more on that?
Yeah, I think it was a very natural transition for me to go into initially private and small group training, which we do out of Syracuse with Bourdeau Skill School. Like I said, it's something I've done. It's like breathing air. It's like drinking water. It's something I've done every day since I was 4 or 5 years old.
Mhm.
So when that became a second option in order to make income and impact the kids, it was, for me, it was very natural and it was very easy. I think I think the difference in my approach with my father and myself is, um, I have a better understanding from being a second generation going through the sport, and how to approach relationships with the kids and the personalities, and how to press different buttons, and who you can press and how you can press them, because every kid needs to be coached differently. I firmly believe that. Whereas, my dad's upbringing was martial arts and karate, and he understood disciplines and training techniques from that sense.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm sure it's hard to separate having your child rather than me having it be a student or a player of mine. You have a lot more emotion, different, I shouldn't say more emotion, different emotion involved. So I definitely take approach than my father, but still the same intensity. You can still be intense and have the same expectations, but
Mhm.
the way you go about it and the way you speak to people and players it's very different than how I grew up.
Absolutely. That old school approach was very much dominated by masculine characteristics and that energy that you feel. And that absolutely has a place, and it's appropriate when it's appropriate, but there needs to be a balance with the feminine characteristics and that energy too. And obviously you've alluded to your mother being, the divine feminine characteristics for sure, and feeding off that energy. But there's definitely a time and place to exhibit both. And it seems like you have a pretty good balance, and I've seen you around the guys. I think you exude a lot of that. So it's really refreshing for you to be mindful of it the way you are, and for everyone listening to appreciate why you're different, and why their experience with you versus another coach, whether it be individual training or to be lucky and fortunate to have you coach them on a team, would be the experience that I think any parent logically would want to associate themselves with as a partner.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Yeah. So part of the experience of impact on kids is multifaceted, to say the least. You have lots of fun, lots of great times, great memories, seeing individuals challenge themselves, handle conflicts that no one else knows, but maybe sometimes you. And unfortunately, a couple of years back with Ava, you had to experience something that was pretty traumatic for everyone. Can you just explain to everybody that experience and how that was for you, just as your interactions with her before the passing, and how that impacted you and the community that you were affiliated with her and the two umbrellas?
Yeah, I mean, in general, all coaches, I'm sure, will tell you, the being a player and being able to play as long as I have, it satisfies you to a level that you can't really find outside the game. But it's more selfish if you really break it down to its core, because it makes you feel good. You're playing, you're doing what you love. Coaching is and training players is much more fulfilling and much more rewarding, for the simple fact that you build those relationships, and you get close to the players, and you genuinely care about each and every one of them. That being said, with what happened with Ava, um, and her passing away and being murdered, it's something you never, I mean, no one wants to experience and go through that. It was a time and a moment that was very difficult, and not just obviously for me, but for an entire community, for her family, for her mother. Um, it's it's something that you never hope you have to experience and go through. But I'll always remember the moments on the field, the moments training, the experiences you have with the players, and the relationship. And that's kind of, what keeps you going all the time as a coach is those relationships. And as much as I enjoy coaching and I think I'm giving back and helping the players, they are giving back just as much to myself as a coach. And I mean, we train every morning with Utica City, and being able to go back and work with the players every day from, 3 to 9, Monday through Friday. It's a lot of it's like therapy too. It's therapeutic. It's good. You're around kids. They're always in good spirits. You're around the game, so it's very re-energizing, I'd say. So as much as they give to me, I feel like, or as much as I give to them, I feel like they give back 10 times.
Yeah. And you got to, I totally agree. I think you're getting a taste of what I go through on my end. And obviously, each experience is uniquely different, and everybody is its own Hallmark movie, and it's pretty special when you have, the impact that that you're making, but also, as you just said so eloquently, how it comes back to you and how it fulfills you. So I'm really happy you had that. But I have to ask you, the game when you took it to the last second to get that handball before Gordy ended up scoring the winning goal, tie, neck and neck. Can you explain to us just that? And that was the first game back, and just everything with Ava and everything. So please share your experience on that, because that was tear jerking for me, to say the least. And I told you that night. But for your experience with all that, how did you handle all that? How were you able to perform so well, and even just to top it off with that amazing, memorable game? I mean, I don't think anybody's ever going to forget that one.
Yeah, as an athlete, you're always you're pretty good at compartmentalizing and separating things that happen off the field, and not letting it bother you on the field. It's just kind of what you learn from a young age. Um, Moments like that, it's difficult before the game, and your teammates are there to support you. But once the whistle blows, you just escape. Now, for the game to end the way it did, and how it did, is, you can't write or script that. It's surreal, and it makes you like wonder what this world's really about, because it's not. There was never a thought in the moment, like during the game, where I'm just sitting there like, oh, I need to have a moment where there's something talked about. And like, you don't ever think of a situation like that before the ball to fall where it did, when it did, with how much time on the clock, with there's so much that has to go a certain way for things to happen the way they did. It's crazy. It's like the world's not a real place, and I don't. Yeah, it's like I can't even explain it.
Oh gosh, I'm getting teary-eyed just thinking about it. Honestly, maybe I'm more emotional than other people, but that was I don't know how anybody couldn't be in their feels during that time. I mean, that was wild. I'm just so happy that it worked out the way it did, for that memory to happen, for everyone to have that appreciation and that joy of such an awful experience for everyone to have, but then to have that moment be like, it's gonna be okay. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Pretty cool. So changing it up so I don't get too emotional and cry it out. um, Talk about just for individuals that don't know, which I don't know if it's really public, but can you explain to everybody what you've been through this past year? Because this is its own unique story, and trauma and perseverance that was needed, to say the least. And I would love for you to highlight some of this, because I don't think people really truly understand what you've been through.
Yeah, so I think if we take it all the way back, I started to have injury problems about 14 months ago. I was fortunate enough to be called into the futsal national team camp from Coach Everton. And that's kind of when the problems started to happen. I went through a camp and I felt like I had a pulled hip flexor. So I just pulled myself out and tried to come back to Syracuse and prepare for a season. And every time I would try to go train, I would rest it and it just wasn't feeling or healing like a pulled muscle. So through weeks of testing and traveling to Philadelphia and seeing different surgeons and getting opinions, um, I was diagnosed with a torn hip labrum and hip impingement that required surgery, which after speaking with Tommy Everton and the ownership, we felt was best to do immediately during last season, which took me out the entire season, which I think a lot of the fans know. What a lot of people don't know is 2 months into that recovery, I was starting to get up and being more mobile and running on a treadmill, and my right hip started to scream at me. So then we had to wrestle with that hurdle and same testing, went and saw the same doctors, same surgeons, imaging, and come to find out that I had the same issue in my right hip. So then you play, it's extremely stressful. It's extremely, um, time consuming and weighs a lot on your mind, especially the older you get in the game. Your window gets smaller and smaller. And we decided that immediate surgery for the right hip was necessary if I was going to be able to come back and play again this season. And without family, aunts, uncles, mom, dad, grandparents, friends, teammates, coaches, as a player, it was probably one of my more difficult, if not the most difficult experience, because you start to wrestle with different thoughts and ideas. And man, I took rehab about as serious as you could take it. I didn't work for 8 months. I moved in with families. I was buying peptides and different things off the internet. I was getting scammed on the black market initially for some of those things until I found the right places. My diet was very strict. And I had to make a lot of sacrifices, but again, it's that discipline and knowing what I want out of life. And if I want to do it, you can't do 1 foot in, 1 foot out, because you only get one good chance to really go at it again, especially at this point in my career. So I knew I couldn't balance coaching with, occasionally going out with friends. And I didn't want to give any excuse or chance for me to not be able to come back and give it my 100%. So it was a very difficult process. Like I said, I was literally laying on my stomach for 4 to 6 hours every day, on a couch at families, just watching the same TV shows with my grandma. And it was it was great to be able to connect with family again, but it was yeah, it was very mentally exhausting.
Yeah.
Um, but I would say it was, knock on wood, it's been worth it. It's been worth it.
Yeah. You clearly have become even more unbreakable to pressure externally and internally. And when we first spoke, just for everybody that knows, I always give the players a break from me, just to dissociate and just be a human being. But with Nate, it was important to just let him be. I don't need to make sure he's on the right path. I know he's on the right path, but I knew that sometimes as a coach and as a leader or as a parent, that you need to let your player or your son or whoever it is be on their own and figure it out. And not that I'm the only one for Nate as an example, but the intention was to see what he was made of and what he really wanted in his heart, because events like that really start to question if you really want that life. And I'm sure that you've had those moments where you're like, is this even worth it? Do I really love it this much? Even if I do, is it worth it if it happens again? And you've clearly answered all of those questions. And I am so proud of you as a human being and as a leader of yourself before you become a leader of other people. You have shown yourself the way. And it's something that no matter what happens here on out, there's so much to be proud of. And the enlightenment that you've gained from it is, you can't even put a number tag, on it, but it's something really cool. And I think it's going to inspire a lot of people, especially with what's going to happen this season with you and going forward after this. So yeah, thank you for being you, brother, because you've inspired all of us. You really have.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So just to highlight a little bit with regards to obviously me and how you've been interacting with me the last 2 years with team dynamic, leadership, and obviously for your own development. Can you just enlighten some of the guys here of what that experience has been like with me?
Yeah, I think what I've really enjoyed about you dealing with me personally is you approach and you have a good feel for each person individually and how you can best impact them. I can honestly say that when I feel like I've needed space without telling you, you've kind of sensed that and given me the space I need. Because I'm the type of person that I don't always like to talk about things while I still feel emotional about them as much. I'd rather sit in my emotions and process them myself before saying anything, because a lot of the time for me, you know, talk is cheap, words are cheap in a lot of situations. At least for me, I'm an internally motivated person. So I feel like these words and stuff it's a lot of it's for show. But for you, I've appreciated those moments when you've backed off, but then I've also appreciated those moments where you've challenged me to be more of a presence and more vocal in certain areas, obviously within my comfort zone. But um, it's, I don't, I'm the type to listen very well. And if I think the advice is right or the person is right, then I'll take it very seriously and try to find those moments while still being myself. And I think you challenged me in those areas, and I'm very conscious of it. And I think it's helped me um, as a player, as a leader, and even coaching now with my players. So I think it's been a great resource, and you've had a great feel for me personally.
Awesome. Well, I don't always get it right. As I said to you and the team, many times over, is that, if I ever cross the line or if I'm just incorrect with the information, obviously I need to be held accountable and put in check, but hopefully that doesn't happen too often. But there's been times where I had to make apologies, to maybe not so much you, but some of the guys on the team when I might have overstepped their capacity to feel in that moment, when I was not willing for them to be felt in the honor of how sensitive they were. And sometimes you have to do that, as you've experienced with your father. And sometimes you have to be overly sensitive and overly coddly, sometimes like a traditional mother would give. But it is a dance. And I think at the very least, you've learned how to dance with it, with obviously not only with the guys on the daily, but with your impact on the kids and all the teams you're with and associated with going forward. So yeah, it's awesome, man. We're all in this together, right? So
That's right.
so speaking of together, just want to finish out with the team. how are you feeling about the team? We're about to start this year, this weekend. What's your vibe with how we were from since Everton and I coming into the team 2 years ago to obviously now? Can you share a little bit about where we're at on our path to brilliance on Utica's?
Yeah, I think I'm very excited, and not just selfishly to be back on the field, but to see, I think year three under coach, the understanding of how we want to play and how he wants us to play. And obviously bringing in guys like Vinny, Dantas, and the addition of Calvin for the season and other players. I think the fans can only expect more from the team and greater things from the team. I think we're very dynamic in possession and going forward. Once we take more pride and clean things up defensively and understanding that's what's going to really win you games when they matter. I think once the team and if the team takes that leap, it's a team that could be unstoppable. But it's got to come from within. It's got to come from us. It's like I said, the boys have heard it over and over. And talk is cheap. At the end of the day, you have to do it. So that's our challenge. But it's exciting. Like any year going into it, it's exciting. So I can't wait.
Just a little insight from a fan's perspective. Every athlete on every team has a lot of hope, and sometimes it's very delusional, and sometimes it's very realistic. I think we're on the spectrum of more realistic than delusional, to say the least, as we've proven in the past. But the past is the past, and now is the now, and we can still, respect both of those. But the idea is, I think what we have on paper looks good. And I think the plan that I have for me with you guys, and I think with Coach Everton's plan with you guys, and obviously Tommy's with you guys, and obviously you leading the way as a leader, I think we're going to be on our path to brilliance, and we'll take it one step at a time. But I think we're all in good hands with you at the helm. So it's my privilege and honor to work with you, and it's my privilege and honor to have you as my first episode. And I thank you so much and for what you highlighted for people to get to know you a little bit more, and what you're really about and what's made you the brilliance that you are.
Thank you, Shay. I appreciate it. It was a fun talk.
Yeah, well, I'll have to do it again.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, brother. Well, I'll talk to you later. All right. I'll see
Sounds
you.
good.
All
See
right,
ya.
bye.